Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English in Moments. I'm Elena, your host, and today we're taking your English fluency to an exciting, truly advanced level. You've probably already mastered those essential connectors like and, but, and so that make your speech flow beautifully. But what if you want to add even more everyday polish and truly sound like a native speaker? What if you want to break through that invisible barrier that so often separates a good English speaker from a truly great one? That barrier is often built from the small, subtle words and phrases that native speakers use without even thinking. Today, we're diving deep into the world of a massive 75 unique English connectors that are the secret key to unlocking that next level. These are phrases and words you'll hear natives use constantly in coffee shops, in business meetings, and on their favorite TV shows, but which aren't always taught in standard lessons. They're those verbal shortcuts and subtle signals that make conversations effortless, natural, and incredibly engaging. They are the linguistic glue that holds natural speech together, making it sound cohesive and sophisticated. Learning these connectors will do more than just expand your vocabulary. They're going to fundamentally change the way you communicate. They're going to help you express yourself with incredible nuance, allowing you to go beyond basic statements to convey subtle meanings, feelings, and intentions. They will help you sound naturally fluent, weaving your ideas together so smoothly that your speech flows like a gentle river, just like native speakers do. You'll also be able to guide your listener, making it easy for others to follow your thoughts, stories, and arguments without getting lost. And ultimately, you will gain immense confidence, feeling more at ease and capable in a wider range of conversations and situations, from casual chats to formal presentations. Before we jump into these fantastic linguistic tools, if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon. This small click is a huge support for our community and ensures you won't miss any of our upcoming lessons designed to empower your English journey. All right, are you ready? Let's unlock some truly unique ways to connect your thoughts and impress with your English every single day. Our first category is all about adding information. Of course, you know and also, but to sound more advanced, you need ways to add ideas with more style and emphasis. These connectors allow you to add subtle layers of meaning, emphasize an additional point, or introduce supporting information in a more sophisticated way. They show your listener that you're not just listing facts, but building a richer, more detailed picture. Let's begin. First, let's talk about as a matter of fact. This is a great phrase to add emphasis. Provide a stronger or more accurate piece of information, or even correct a misconception in everyday conversation. It basically means in reality or actually, but it carries a tone of revealing something that might be surprising or contrary to what someone expects. For example, if someone says, "I thought you were busy today and couldn't come," you might reply, "As a matter of fact, I just finished my work, so I'm completely free." See how it feels really natural for adding a surprising or clarifying detail? It directly addresses the other person's assumption and corrects it politely. Another common use is for strengthening a statement. It wasn't easy. As a matter of fact, it was one of the most difficult challenges I've ever faced. Here it adds weight and intensity. Let's practice. I'll say the example and you can repeat it after me to get the feel for the intonation. I heard you don't like coffee. As a matter of fact, I love it. Ready? I heard you don't like coffee. As a matter of fact, I love it. Now you try to use it to strengthen a point. I'll give you the first part. She looks tired. You add the second part. Ready? She looks tired. As a matter of fact, she worked all night. Next up is mind you. This wonderfully British sounding yet universally understood informal phrase is used to introduce a qualification, a warning, or an additional thought that clarifies or sometimes contrasts what you've just said. It's like a little verbal tap on the shoulder, asking the listener to consider another piece of information. It's often spoken with a slight pause before it. For instance, the movie was good, mind you. The ending was a bit confusing. This adds a small caveat to your positive statement without completely negating it. It shows you have a balanced opinion. Another example. It's a challenging job, mind you. It's also very rewarding. Well, it's perfect for adding an afterthought or a nuance that provides a fuller picture. Think of it as a way to say, but keep this in mind. Let's practice its conversational flow. Repeat after me. The food was delicious, mind you. It was quite spicy. One more time. The food was delicious, mind you. It was quite spicy. Now you try. Imagine you're describing a talented but hardworking person. He's very talented, mind you. He practices constantly. Then we have namely. This connector is fantastic for making your points more specific by introducing a list or a precise example that explains what you just mentioned. It means that is to say, or specifically, and it signals to your listener that you're about to clarify a general term. It's a bit more formal than like, or, for example, making it perfect for when you want to be precise. For example, there's one thing we need to discuss, namely the budget for the next quarter. This clearly and directly defines what that one thing is. Another instance, she has two main hobbies, namely reading and painting. It's more precise than just saying, for example, because it implies you're listing the exact and complete items. Let's practice its clear, definitive tone. Repeat after me. We have to address a critical issue, namely the lack of communication. Excellent. Now you try to specify the sport someone is good at. He's good at several sports, namely basketball and tennis. Moving on top of that. This informal connector is used to add another piece of information that builds on what you've just said, often implying that it's an additional, sometimes compounding factor. It's brilliant for storytelling because it creates a sense of things piling up, whether good or bad. It essentially means, in addition to that, and is very common in casual conversation. For example, if you're complaining, you might say, the rent is expensive, and on top of that, the building is quite old. See how it adds another negative point, making the situation sound worse? But it can also be positive. She got a promotion, and on top of that, a significant raise. It emphasizes an accumulating benefit. Let's practice. Imagine you're telling a friend about a terrible travel experience. Repeat after me. The flight was delayed, and on top of that, my luggage was lost. Now you try, but for a positive experience at a restaurant. The food was delicious, and on top of that, the service was excellent. Next, what's more? This phrase is similar to on top of that, but it's used to add an extra piece of information that is often more important, surprising, or adds greater weight to what you've just said. It's a slightly more emphatic way to say in addition, and often introduces a wow factor. For example, He's incredibly intelligent, and what's more, he's extremely humble. The humility here is presented as an impressive added quality that makes his intelligence even more remarkable. Another example: the new policy saves money, and what's more, it improves efficiency. The efficiency boost is highlighted as a significant bonus beyond just the savings. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The movie was entertaining, and what's more, it had a powerful message. Great! Now you try. Imagine describing a colleague's amazing work. She finished the project early, and what's more, it was absolutely perfect. Then, additionally, this connector is a slightly more formal but still very common way to introduce an extra piece of information or another point. It's a perfect, all purpose connector that works well in presentations, emails, or more structured conversations. It means in addition or further. For example, our company offers great benefits. Additionally, we have a fantastic work culture. It builds on the previous positive point in a very clear and organized way. Here's another example where it's used for instructions. You need to bring your passport. Additionally, please make sure you have your visa. It adds another necessary item to the list. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The product is user-friendly. Additionally, it's very affordable. Now you try to list the good points about a meal. The food was fresh. Additionally, the service was excellent. Another useful connector is not to mention. This informal phrase is used to introduce an extra point that is particularly important or noteworthy, often as an afterthought or for emphasis. The clever thing about this phrase is that you are, in fact, mentioning it, but you pretend it's almost too obvious to say. It means, and especially. For instance, the trip was amazing. We saw beautiful sights, not to mention the incredible food. Well, it highlights the food as a significant, can't be forgotten part of the experience. Another example: he's very supportive, not to mention incredibly generous. It adds generosity as another major positive trait. Let's practice. Repeat after me. She's a great chef, not to mention an excellent baker. Wonderful. Now you try describing a beautiful location. The weather was perfect, not to mention the stunning views. Finally, for our original set coupled with, this connector implies that two things are combined or occur together, and their combination leads to a particular result or situation. It suggests a synergy where the two elements are stronger together. It's a slightly more formal but common way to link contributing factors. For example, strong leadership coupled with a dedicated team led to their success. It shows how the two elements work together to create a powerful outcome. It can also be used for negative situations. Lack of sleep coupled with stress can seriously affect your health. This highlights the dangerous combination of the two factors. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Hard work coupled with natural talent makes a great athlete. Excellent. Now you try to explain a price increase. High demand coupled with limited supply increased prices. Now let's add a few more powerful tools to this category. Consider the word furthermore. This is a formal and very effective way to add another point that reinforces or expands on the previous one. It's like additionally, but perhaps with a bit more weight, often used when building a strong argument. For example, the plan is financially sound. Furthermore, it has the full support of the entire team. The second point adds significant weight to the first. Another example: Regular exercise is good for your physical health. Furthermore, it has been shown to improve mental clarity. This adds another important benefit. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The proposal is well researched. Furthermore, it aligns perfectly with our company's goals. Now you try arguing for a candidate. He has years of experience. Furthermore, his references are outstanding. Similarly, we have moreover. This is another formal connector that adds an extra piece of information to support a point, and it often introduces a reason that is even more important than the previous one. It adds a sense of gravity to your argument. For instance, the new law is unfair to small businesses. Moreover, it is nearly impossible to enforce. The second point highlights a major practical flaw, making the argument stronger. Another example. I don't want to go to the party because I'm tired. Moreover, I have an early meeting tomorrow. The meeting is an even more compelling reason to stay home. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The location is inconvenient. Moreover, the rent is far too high. Now you try explaining why you can't take on a project. My schedule is already full. Moreover, I lack the specific expertise required. Let's look at a more conversational one. In the same vein. This lovely phrase is used to show that your next point is similar to or continues the same line of thought as the one you just made. It means similarly or in a similar way. For example, I really believe we should focus on improving customer service. In the same vein, we need to train our staff more effectively. The training is directly related to the goal of improving service. Another example, she spoke about the importance of environmental conservation. In the same vein, her colleague discussed the benefits of renewable energy. The topics are closely related. Let's practice. Repeat after me. He criticized the lack of funding for the arts. In the same vein, he called for more support for local musicians. Now you try, adding a related suggestion. We should simplify our registration process. In the same vein, we should make our website easier to navigate. Now let's move on to a crucial skill for fluent conversation: expressing contrast and concession. Life isn't always simple agreement. We often need to show different sides of an issue. These phrases allow you to smoothly introduce opposing ideas or acknowledge a point before presenting your own, making your debates and discussions sound much more natural, balanced, and intelligent. First, let's explore having said that, or its shorter, more common form, that said. These are incredibly common in spoken English to acknowledge a previous point or concede something, then immediately introduce a contrasting or balancing idea. It shows you are a reasonable person who can see both sides. For example, the car is expensive. Having said that, it's also very reliable. You admit the high price, but then counter with its good quality. Or you can use the shorter form. I don't usually like action movies. That said, this one was actually quite good. These phrases make your argument sound balanced and thoughtful. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The job requires long hours. Having said that, the pay is excellent. Now you try with a shorter version. Imagine you're in a tough situation. It's a tough decision. That said, we need to make it. Next, we have even so. This connector is used to emphasize that something is true or will happen despite a previous statement or condition. It's a slightly stronger version of nevertheless, often used when the contrasting point is a bit surprising or shows determination. For instance, it started raining heavily. Even so, we decided to go for our walk. The rain was a strong reason to stay inside, but it didn't stop them. Another example showing perseverance. The task was extremely difficult. Even so, she managed to complete it ahead of schedule. It conveys a sense of an unyielding fact in the face of obstacles. Let's practice. Repeat after me. He apologized profusely. Even so, I'm still upset. Now you try. Talking about food? The food was cold. Even so, it tasted good. Then, be that as it may. This phrase is a more formal and sophisticated way to acknowledge a point or argument, but then shift to make a new, often contrasting point that you feel is more important. It means, despite what has been said, or even if that is true. For example, in a debate, you might say, the argument from the other side was compelling. Be that as it may, I still have serious doubts about its practicality. It allows you to concede a point gracefully while still holding your ground. Another example. It's a tough market. Be that as it may, we must persevere and find a way to succeed. Let's practice its dignified tone. Repeat after me. The deadline is tight. Be that as it may, we will deliver on time. Now you try. Face in bad weather. The weather is bad. Be that as it may, we still need to go. Moving on. Whereas. This connector is used to introduce a statement that contrasts directly with something previously mentioned. It often presents two opposing ideas or facts within the same sentence, making it excellent for direct comparisons. For example, my brother loves classical music, whereas I prefer rock. This highlights a direct difference in preference clearly and concisely. Another example comparing work styles. Some people prefer to work alone, whereas others thrive in a team. It's great for presenting two distinct options or realities side by side. Let's practice. Repeat after me. She enjoys quiet evenings at home, whereas her roommate loves loud parties. Now you try to compare physical traits. He's very tall, whereas his sister is quite short. Next, by contrast. This phrase is used to introduce a noticeable and often significant difference with something previously mentioned. It signals a clear, sharp comparison between two distinct entities or ideas. You often use it to start a new sentence. For instance, the old system was slow and inefficient. By contrast, the new system is incredibly fast. It sets up a strong opposition that emphasizes the improvement. Another example. City life is fast-paced and often stressful. By contrast, rural life is much more relaxed. It's very common in discussions or reports where you need to highlight differences. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Our initial sales were low. By contrast, our current figures are excellent. Now try comparing personalities. She's an extrovert. By contrast, her husband is an introvert. Then, unlike. This connector is a very direct and efficient way to highlight a dissimilarity or difference from something else. It clearly states that something is not like another thing, usually at the beginning of a sentence. For example, unlike my brother, I enjoy cooking. This shows a clear difference in hobbies right away. Another instance. Unlike most smartphones, this model has a very long battery life. It's concise and effective for pointing out unique features or differences. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Unlike the previous version, the new software is very easy to use. Now you try to contrast your habit with someone else's. Unlike me, she loves waking up early. Another useful one is on the contrary. This is a strong phrase used to directly contradict or express the opposite of what was just said or implied. You use this when someone has the wrong idea and you want to correct them emphatically. It often shows strong disagreement or correction. For example, if someone says, I thought you disliked the proposal, you could respond, on the contrary, I find it very promising. This expresses a clear opposing view. Another example, many people think it's a failure. On the contrary, it's a valuable learning experience. It frames the situation in a completely opposite way. Let's practice. Imagine someone has the wrong impression of a colleague. Repeat after me. You think he's lazy? On the contrary, he's one of the hardest workers I know. Now you try correcting someone's assumption about your feelings. I wasn't disappointed. On the contrary, I was thrilled. Finally, for this group, while used for contrast. While the word while often means at the same time, it's also very commonly used to introduce a contrasting idea or concession, similar to although, but often sounding more conversational and less formal. For example, while I understand your point, I don't entirely agree. It acknowledges the validity of one side but gently presents a different view. Another instance. While the weather was cold, we still enjoyed the hike. It balances two pieces of information, showing that the negative aspect didn't ruin the positive one. Let's practice. Repeat after me. While the project was challenging, it was also very rewarding. Now you try describing a person's mixed qualities. While she is intelligent, she can also be quite stubborn. Let's now add some more nuanced ways to show contrast. Let's look at nevertheless and nonetheless. These two words are very similar and essentially interchangeable. They are formal and strong ways to say despite that, or even so. They introduce a fact or idea that is surprising in light of the previous statement. For example, the research was complex and time-consuming. Nevertheless, the team completed it successfully. This emphasizes their achievement despite the difficulty. Another example, there were many obstacles. Nonetheless, he was determined to succeed. It shows resilience. Let's practice with nevertheless. Repeat after me. The traffic was terrible. Nevertheless, we arrived on time. Now you try with nonetheless describing a difficult choice. I was scared of the change. Nonetheless, I knew it was the right decision. Next, consider at the same time. This phrase is fantastic for introducing a contrasting idea that exists simultaneously with the first one. It suggests a balance or a conflict between two realities. For instance, I'm excited about the new job. At the same time, I'm nervous about the extra responsibility. It perfectly captures the mixed feelings. Another example, he wants to save money for the future. At the same time, he enjoys traveling and experiencing new things. This highlights a classic conflict between two desires. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The movie was very long. At the same time, I didn't want it to end. Now you try expressing your view on technology. I love the convenience of my smartphone. At the same time, I worry about spending too much time on it. Here's a great, slightly more advanced phrase, for all that. This connector means despite or in spite of. Oh, it's used to show that even though something is true, it doesn't change the main point. For example, he has some flaws, but for all that, he is a very good friend. This means despite his flaws, his good quality as a friend remains. Another example. It was a difficult journey, but for all that, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. The difficulty didn't ruin the value of the experience. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The work is demanding. For all that, it's incredibly rewarding. Now you try describing a place. The city is noisy and crowded. For all that, it's a very exciting place to live. Let's end this section with a very conversational connector. Still and all. This is an informal phrase, very common in North American English that means despite everything or nevertheless. It's a folksy way to acknowledge difficulties before stating a final, overriding truth. For example, we had a lot of disagreements and faced many problems. Still in all, we managed to finish the project together. It summarizes the journey and focuses on the positive outcome. Another example. It was a tough year for the family. Still in all, we have each other, and that's what matters. It adds a touch of heartfelt resilience. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The trip had some bumps in the road. Still in all, it was a fantastic vacation. Now you try, reflecting on a learning experience. I made a lot of mistakes. Still in all, I learned so much. Understanding how to explain reasons, goals, and conditions is essential for clear communication. This next group of connectors will help you do just that. They help you explain the conditions under which something will happen, the specific purpose behind an action, or the underlying reason for a situation, adding precision to your plans and explanations. First, consider given that. This connector means considering that, or because of the fact that. It's used to introduce a known fact or circumstance that forms the basis for your next statement or logical conclusion. You're essentially saying, because this part is true, this other part must follow. For example, given that the economy is unstable, we need to be careful with our investments. The economic situation is the established reason for caution. Another example, given that you're so busy, I can help with this task. It implies a logical offer based on the other person's situation. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Given that it's getting late, we should probably go home. Now you try, planning for the weather. Given that the forecast is rain, we should bring umbrellas. Next up is in the event that. This phrase is used to talk about a possible future situation or contingency. It means if something happens or should it occur. It's very common for making plans or stating precautions, especially in more formal contexts. For example, in the event that you have any questions, please contact our support team. This prepares for a potential query. You can also use in the event of followed by a noun. In the event of a power outage, use the emergency lights. Both forms are useful for providing instructions for specific scenarios. Let's practice. Repeat after me. In the event that the flight is delayed, we will notify you by text message. Now you try with the noun form, giving an emergency instruction. In the event of an emergency, call 911. Then to that end. This connector is a sophisticated way to introduce the purpose or goal of a previous statement or action, providing clarity and logical flow. It means for that specific purpose, or with that goal in mind. It elegantly links a problem or goal with its solution. For example, we need to improve our communication. To that end, we will hold weekly team meetings. The meetings are presented as the specific action to achieve the goal of better communication. Another example. He wants to learn Spanish. To that end, he practices with a language app daily. Let's practice. Repeat after me. We are developing a new product. To that end, we have invested heavily in research and development. Now you try explaining someone's study habits. She wants to become a doctor. To that end, she studies very hard every night. Moving on, in light of. This formal but commonly used phrase means considering or because of a particular situation or new piece of information. It indicates that a decision or action is being made as a direct response to recent developments. It's often used when plans need to change. For example, in light of the recent changes to the policy, we need to revise our strategy. The changes are the specific reason for the revision. Another example. The outdoor meeting was canceled in light of the bad weather forecast. It's a great way to explain the context of a decision. Let's practice. Repeat after me. In light of the new evidence, the investigation has been reopened. Now you try explaining a change you made based on feedback. In light of your feedback, we have made some adjustments to the proposal. Next, consequently. This connector means as a result, or therefore, introducing a direct and logical outcome of a previous action or event. It's slightly more formal than so, but very common in explanations where you want to sound clear and logical. For instance, the company's profits increased significantly last year. Consequently, they decided to hire more staff. The hiring is presented as a direct, logical result of the profits. Another example. She didn't study for the exam. Consequently, she performed poorly. It clearly links cause and effect. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The roads were icy, consequently traffic was very slow. Now you try explaining a travel mishap. He missed his flight. Consequently, he arrived a day late. Then, on account of. This phrase means because of or due to, providing a reason for something. It's often used when the reason is a circumstance or an event, especially one that is somewhat out of one's control. For example, the game was postponed on account of the heavy rain. The rain is the external reason for the postponement. Another example, she couldn't attend the meeting on account of a prior engagement. It's a common and slightly formal way to explain why something happened or couldn't happen. Let's practice. Repeat after me. He was late on account of an unexpected traffic accident. Now you try to explain why a business is closed. The shop closed early on account of the national holiday. Another very useful connector is thereby. This single word is a very efficient way to say by that means or as a result of that. It's used to introduce the consequence or effect of the action mentioned in the main clause, often linking them together in a smooth, concise way within the same sentence. For example, he trained diligently for months, thereby improving his performance significantly. The diligent training directly led to the improved performance. Another example. The company cut unnecessary costs, thereby increasing its overall profits. It directly links an action to its outcome. Let's practice. Repeat after me. She learned new digital skills, thereby opening up new career opportunities for herself. Now you try describing teamwork. They work together efficiently, thereby finishing the project faster. Finally, for our initial group, as a result of which. This longer phrase is a slightly more formal but very clear way to introduce a consequence that specifically stems from a previous action or situation mentioned in the first part of the sentence. It connects a past event to its direct outcome in a very structured way. For instance, the company invested heavily in research, as a result of which they developed groundbreaking new products. The product development is shown as a direct result of the investment. Another example, he ignored the advice of his colleagues, as a result of which he made a costly mistake. Let's practice. Repeat after me. She practiced every day, as a result of which her English improved dramatically. Now you try describing the effects of a storm. The storm caused widespread damage, as a result of which many homes were without power. Let's add a few more precision tools to this category. First, provided that or providing. This is a fantastic alternative to if or as long as. It sets a clear condition that must be met for something else to happen. For example, you can borrow my car provided that you bring it back with a full tank of gas. The condition is very clear. Another example, we will sign the contract providing all our terms are met. It's common in negotiations and making agreements. Let's practice with provided that. Repeat after me. The event will be held outdoors provided that the weather is good. Now you try with providing, setting a condition for a job. I will accept the offer, providing the salary is negotiable. Next, let's explore insofar as. This is a more advanced and formal phrase that means to the extent that. It's used to qualify a statement, limiting it to a particular aspect. For instance, I agree with his proposal insofar as it relates to the budget. This means you agree with the budget part, but maybe not other parts. Another example. The new system is an improvement insofar as it is faster than the old one. It's an improvement specifically in terms of speed. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The book is helpful insofar as it provides a good introduction to the topic. Now you try, giving a qualified opinion. The project was a success insofar as we met all the deadlines. Here's another useful one for explaining purpose. For the sake of. This phrase means for the purpose of, or in the interest of. It often implies a reason related to a greater good, a principle, or to simplify things. For example, for the sake of clarity, let's review the main points one more time. The purpose is to be clear. Another example often used in arguments. He agreed to compromise for the sake of peace in the family. The purpose was to maintain harmony. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Let's put our differences aside for the sake of the team. Now you try explaining a simplification. I've omitted some minor details for the sake of brevity. And an excellent informal connector for giving reasons is seeing as. This is a casual way to say since or because, often used when the reason is obvious. For example, seeing as you've finished your work, maybe you could help me with mine. It's a friendly way to introduce a suggestion based on a clear situation. Another example. I think we should take a taxi, seeing as it's starting to rain. The reason is plain to see. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Seeing as we're all here, let's start the meeting. Now you try making a suggestion for dinner. Seeing as it's your birthday, you should choose the restaurant. Being able to guide your listener through a story, a process, or an argument is a key part of fluent communication. These connectors help you explain the order of events, steps in a process, or points in an argument with precision and a natural flow, going beyond simple words like first, then next. They add structure and emphasis to your narrative. First, consider first and foremost. This emphatic phrase is used to highlight the most important point or priority. It's much stronger than a simple first and immediately draws the listener's attention to what is absolutely crucial. For example, when starting a new business, first and foremost, we need to ensure the safety of our employees and customers. This clearly sets the top priority above all else. Another example: my goal in this new role is first and foremost to finish this critical project on time. It's great for making your main point stand out. Let's practice. Repeat after me. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for coming today. Now you try, stating a core principle. First and foremost, we must respect each other's opinions. Next, we have last but not least. This charming and common phrase is used to introduce the final item in a list, especially when you want to emphasize that it is just as important as, or even more important than, the preceding items. It builds anticipation for the last point and treats it with special care. For example, in our project, we've discussed planning, execution, and last but not least, evaluation. It gives due importance to the final step. It's also wonderful for acknowledging people. I'd like to thank John, Sarah, and last but not least, our dedicated volunteers who made this all possible. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Our team includes designers, developers, and last but not least, our amazing testers. Now you try describing a meal. The meal featured appetizers, main courses, and last but not least, a selection of delicious desserts. Moving on, subsequently. This connector means afterward or later, indicating that something happened immediately after a previous event. It's a slightly more formal alternative to then or after that, and it's common in telling a story or describing a process in a formal context. It implies a logical progression. For example, the detailed report was submitted, and subsequently a meeting was called to discuss the findings. The meeting happened right after as a consequence of the submission. Another example: he lost his job and subsequently struggled to find new employment. Let's practice. Repeat after me. She finished her degree in engineering. Subsequently, she found a great job at a top firm. Now you try describing a sequence of actions. The instructions were given. Subsequently, the team began the task. Then, prior to. This phrase simply means before or earlier than, specifying that something happened or should happen before a particular event or time. It's more formal than before, but very common in everyday explanations and instructions. For example, prior to the client meeting, I reviewed all the relevant documents. This shows you prepared beforehand. Another example: you need to submit the application form prior to the deadline. It clearly sets a time boundary. Let's practice this useful phrase. Repeat after me. Prior to starting the engine, always check the oil. Now you try talking about travel preparation. Prior to our departure, we packed all our bags. Another useful connector is meanwhile. This word is used to indicate that something else is happening at the same time as another event, or during the period between two events. It adds a sense of simultaneous action or a change in focus, which makes storytelling much more dynamic. For example, I was in the kitchen cooking dinner. Meanwhile, my husband was in the living room setting the table. This describes parallel activities. It can also show a contrast. The company launched its new product with a huge marketing campaign. Meanwhile, its competitors were quietly developing similar, more advanced technologies. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The children played in the park. Meanwhile, their parents relaxed on a bench nearby. Now you try describing an office scene. The team worked on the presentation. Meanwhile, the manager prepared the monthly report. Next, in the interim. This phrase means in the meantime, or during the period between two events. It's similar to meanwhile, but often specifically implies a temporary period while waiting for something else to happen. Oh, it's perfect for describing temporary arrangements or plans. For instance, the new software will be released next month. In the interim, we will have to continue using the old system. This sets a clear temporary plan. Another example, she's waiting for her visa to be approved. In the interim, she's working part-time at a local cafe. It perfectly explains temporary arrangements. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The repairs on your car will take a week. In the interim, you can use this loaner car. Now you try describing someone's situation. He's studying for his final exam. In the interim, he's also working to save money. Then, up until now. This phrase is used to describe a situation or action that has been true or happening continuously from the past right up to the present moment. Crucially, it often implies that a change is about to occur or has just occurred, marking a turning point. It sets a clear time frame that is now ending. For example, up until now, we've always used traditional marketing methods. This strongly implies a shift to new, perhaps digital, methods is coming. Another example, up until now, I hadn't realized how important this was. It highlights a past state of mind that changes in the present. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Up until now, I thought it was impossible to do. Now you try, talking about the weather. Up until now, the weather has been perfect for our vacation. Finally, for this set. To begin with. This phrase is used to introduce the first point or reason in a discussion or explanation, often when you are listing multiple reasons or starting a complex topic. It sets the stage for what you're about to say and signals to the listener that this is point number one. For example, to begin with, I'd like to thank everyone for their hard work on this project. This is the opening point of a speech. It can also be used to give reasons. Why did I choose this course? Well, to begin with, I'm very interested in the subject matter. It's a natural way to kick off an explanation. Let's practice. Repeat after me. To begin with, let's review our goals for today's meeting. Now you try, starting an explanation for a decision. To begin with, the cost was a major factor in our choice. Let's add a few more to our sequencing toolkit. A great alternative for starting a list of reasons is in the first place. It's similar to begin with, but can feel a little stronger, especially when you're explaining a problem or a justification. For example, why didn't the plan work? Well, in the first place, our initial research was incomplete. This introduces the foundational reason for the failure. Another example, I shouldn't have gone out. In the first place, I had too much work to do. It establishes the primary reason for regret. Let's practice. Repeat after me. It was a bad idea. In the first place, it was far too risky. Now you try, justifying a decision. We decided not to buy the house. In the first place, it was over our budget. To describe things happening at the exact same time, you can use simultaneously. It's a more formal and precise version of at the same time. For instance, The two events were broadcast simultaneously on different channels. It means they happened in perfect sync. Another example. She was an amazing multitasker, able to listen to music and study simultaneously. It emphasizes the ability to do two things at once. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The company launched its new products in Europe and Asia simultaneously. Now you try describing a complex action. The drummer hit the cymbal and the bass drum simultaneously. How about for talking about the future? In due course is a wonderful phrase that means at the appropriate time in the future. It suggests a natural, unhurried progression of events. For example, we have submitted the proposal and we expect a response in due course. It conveys patience and professionalism. Another example. Don't worry about the details now. All will be revealed in due course. It's reassuring and implies that things will happen when they are supposed to. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Your application is being processed, and you will be notified of the decision in due course. Now you try, answering a question about a future plan. We haven't made a final decision yet, but we will in due course. And to mark a pivotal moment in a story, use from that point on. This phrase is perfect for showing how a specific event changed everything that came after it. For instance, she won her first competition, and from that point on, her career as an athlete took off. It shows a clear turning point. Another example. He discovered his passion for cooking during his trip to Italy. From that point on, he dedicated his life to becoming a chef. It highlights the beginning of a new chapter. Let's practice. Repeat after me. After he gave that speech, from that point on, everyone saw him as a leader. Now you try telling a personal story. I read that book, and from that point on, my perspective on life changed completely. Sometimes the most important part of communication is making sure your message is crystal clear. You need to highlight what's truly important, simplify complex ideas, and ensure there's no room for misunderstanding. These connectors are your tools for precision. They allow you to rephrase, highlight, or stress certain points, making your message exceptionally clear and ensuring your audience understands exactly what you mean. First, let's look at specifically. This connector is used to introduce a precise detail or to clarify exactly what you are referring to, narrowing down a general statement to something more concrete. For example, I like all kinds of music, but specifically, I'm a big fan of classical and jazz. You're naming the exact types you prefer. Another example, we need to address the main issue, specifically how it impacts customer satisfaction. It adds precision and focus to the conversation. Let's practice. Repeat after me. She's studying several languages, specifically Spanish and French. Now you try talking about hobbies. He enjoys outdoor activities, specifically hiking and kayaking. Next up is in particular. This phrase is very similar to specifically, but it often emphasizes one item or aspect above others in a group, highlighting its special importance or relevance to you. For instance, I enjoy all sports, but I love football in particular. This singles out football as a personal favorite. Another example. The new policy will affect all departments, but in particular, it will change how sales and marketing operate. It draws special attention to the areas that will be most impacted. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The book was excellent. In particular, the last chapter was unforgettable. Now you try expressing a preference. I love traveling, in particular to historical sites. Then, needless to say. This is a clever rhetorical phrase. It's used to introduce a point that is so obvious or well known that it doesn't really need to be stated. Yet you state it anyway for emphasis or completeness. For example, the team worked tirelessly for months on the project, and needless to say, they achieved their goal. The success was the expected, obvious outcome. Another example: he's been practicing the piano since he was 5 years old. Needless to say, he's very skilled. It highlights an undeniable fact in a slightly dramatic way. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The weather was terrible, and needless to say, the outdoor event was canceled. Now you try talking about a great student. She's a brilliant student. Needless to say, she passed the exam with flying colors. Moving on, crucially, this powerful adverbial connector emphasizes that a point is of extreme importance, implying that it is essential for understanding the whole situation or for the outcome of a situation. It signals a make or break point. For example, the first step is planning, but crucially, we need to secure funding before we can begin. The funding is presented as the vital, non-negotiable element. Another example for a student: listen carefully because crucially this information will be on the final test. It signals paramount importance. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The details are complex, but crucially we must focus on the main objective. Now you try giving life advice. Communication is important, but crucially, listening is vital. Next, notably. This connector is used to highlight something particularly important, interesting, or remarkable that deserves special attention. It means especially or significantly, and is often used to point out a distinguished example from a group. For example, the report listed several areas for improvement, notably our outdated customer service protocols. This singles out customer service as a key area needing change. Another example: many experts contributed to the project, most notably Professor Lee from the university. It points out a distinguished contributor. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The city has many wonderful attractions, notably its historic old town. Now you try complimenting someone's work. Her performance was impressive, most notably her dedication to the project. Then, in other words, this is one of the most useful phrases for ensuring clarity. It is used to rephrase something that was just said, usually to make it simpler, clearer, or to explain it in a different way. It's an excellent tool for ensuring your listener understands you completely. For example, the company needs to restructure its core marketing strategy. In other words, they need to find a better way to reach a wider audience. You're simplifying the corporate jargon. Another example: he's very meticulous. In other words, he pays extremely close attention to every single detail. It provides a helpful alternative explanation. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The new policy emphasizes collaboration. In other words, we need to work together more. Now you try explaining a word. She's a polyglot. In other words, she speaks many languages. Another useful connector is to be fair. This phrase is used to introduce a point that shows consideration for another person's perspective, acknowledges a difficulty, or provides a more balanced view, even if it goes against your initial argument. It's a sign of being reasonable and fair-minded. For example, he made a big mistake, but to be fair, he was under a lot of pressure at the time. You're acknowledging the extenuating circumstance. Another example, the project was delayed. To be fair, the terrible weather last week didn't help. It offers a mitigating factor. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The food wasn't perfect, but to be fair, it was very cheap. Now you try describing a person. She can be very demanding, but to be fair, her standards are also very high. Next, to reiterate, when you want to re-emphasize a point or summarize something you've already said, to reiterate is a formal and clear way to do it. It signals to your listener that you are repeating something important for emphasis or clarity, so they should pay close attention. For example, in a meeting, to reiterate, timely submission of all reports is essential for this project's success. This ensures the point is clearly understood. Another example, to reiterate, our main objective is, and always has been, customer satisfaction. Let's practice. Repeat after me. To reiterate, safety protocols must always be followed without exception. Now you try summarizing a team's core value. To reiterate, teamwork is the key to our success. Finally, in this section, to put it simply, or its even more common form, simply put. These phrases are perfect for simplifying a complex idea or summarizing something in a very straightforward and easy to understand way. They signal that you're about to give the concise core message. For example, the new software system has many advanced features and integrations, but to put it simply, it will save us a lot of time. You cut through all the complexity to the main benefit. Another example, simply put, we need to increase sales or we'll be in trouble. They are incredibly useful for clarity. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The economic situation is complicated, but to put it simply, we need to adapt quickly. Now you try giving direct advice. Simply put, you need to practice every day if you want to improve. Let's expand this category with even more ways to emphasize and clarify. A great phrase for getting to the core of an idea is in essence. This means fundamentally or at its heart. You use it to strip away the details and reveal the most important quality of something. For example, the new strategy involves many changes, but in essence, it's about putting the customer first. This identifies the core principle. Another example, their philosophies seem different, but in essence, they both believe in the importance of community. It highlights a fundamental similarity. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The job description is long, but in essence, they are looking for a creative problem solver. Now you try summarizing a book's theme. The story is complex, but in essence, it's a tale about friendship. A more formal version of, in other words, is that is to say. It is often used in writing or formal speech to provide further explanation or clarification of a point. For instance, the two countries have reached an impasse. That is to say, neither side is willing to compromise. It clarifies the meaning of impasse. Another example. He is a connoisseur of fine art. That is to say, he has a deep knowledge and appreciation of painting and sculpture. It explains what connoisseur means in this context. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The results were inconclusive. That is to say, we could not prove or disprove our theory. Now you try clarifying a statement. We need to be more proactive. That is to say, we should anticipate problems before they happen. For absolute emphasis, you can use without a doubt. This phrase leaves no room for uncertainty and shows complete conviction. Oh, it's a powerful way to state an opinion or a fact you are certain of. For example, she is, without a doubt, the best candidate for the job. It strongly endorses her. Another example, this is, without a doubt, the most beautiful sunset I have ever seen. It expresses strong feeling. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Without a doubt, this has been an incredible experience. Now you try giving a strong opinion. That was, without a doubt, the worst movie I've seen all year. And finally, to highlight the most important thing, use above all. This phrase puts one point, principle, or instruction at the very top of the list in terms of importance. It means more than anything else. For example, when you are driving, you must be careful, but above all, you must not speed. It highlights the most critical rule. Another example, she is intelligent, hardworking, and kind. But above all, she is honest. It singles out honesty as her most important quality. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Remember to be prepared, be on time, and above all, be yourself. Now you try giving advice. To learn a language, you need to study grammar and vocabulary, but above all, you must practice speaking. Finally, we've reached our last category, which is all about wrapping things up. How you summarize your points and conclude your thoughts can leave a lasting impression. These connectors help you summarize, give a general impression, introduce your own viewpoint, or bring your thoughts to a clear and natural close in everyday conversations. First, let's explore all things considered. This phrase is used to indicate that you are taking all the different factors and circumstances into account when making a general statement or drawing a final conclusion. It means when everything is taken into account and shows a thoughtful, balanced judgment. For example, there were a few technical issues, but all things considered, the event was a huge success. It offers an overall positive assessment despite minor problems. Another example, it was hard to leave my old friends, but all things considered, it was a good decision to move to this city. It provides a balanced, comprehensive summary. Let's practice. Repeat after me. All things considered, the team performed admirably this season. Now you try summarizing your day. All things considered, it was a very productive day. Next, we have from my perspective. This phrase is excellent for clearly stating that you are offering your own opinion or viewpoint, especially when discussing subjective topics. It's a polite and common way to introduce a personal take without presenting it as an absolute fact. For example, others might disagree, but from my perspective, the new plan is a good idea. You're clearly sharing your personal belief. Another example. From my perspective, teamwork is the most crucial key to success in any project. It emphasizes your individual view. Let's practice. Repeat after me. From my perspective, the movie was quite thought-provoking. Now you try sharing your opinion in a meeting. From my perspective, we need more time to complete this properly than, for one thing. This useful phrase is used to introduce the first reason or example in a list of several that support your point. It signals to your listener that you're about to give a specific reason and that more reasons might follow. For example, why don't I like cold weather? Well, for one thing, it's so hard to stay warm. This is your primary reason, implying there are others. Another instance, he's a great colleague. For one thing, he's always willing to help out when you're busy. It sets up a series of supporting points. Let's practice. Repeat after me. I can't go out tonight. For one thing, I'm really tired. Now you try explaining a challenge. Why is this project so challenging? For one thing, the deadline is extremely tight. Moving on, in a nutshell. This is a very informal and common phrase used to summarize something briefly and concisely, getting straight to the main point. It means in short, or to put it simply, but it has a more casual, friendly feel. For example, the whole story is complicated with lots of details, but in a nutshell, we won the contract. You're giving the essential outcome. Another example. In a nutshell, the meeting was very productive and we made some key decisions. It's perfect for a quick, informal recap. Let's practice. Repeat after me. His philosophy is complex, but in a nutshell, he believes in kindness above all. Now you try simplifying a problem. The problem is complicated, but in a nutshell, we need more resources. Next, ultimately. This connector is used to introduce the final or most important result, conclusion, or outcome after a series of events or considerations. It implies a sense of finality or the bottom line truth of a situation. For example, we tried many different strategies, but ultimately the simplest one worked best. This reveals the final successful outcome. Another example. He faced many challenges and setbacks, but ultimately he achieved his dream of becoming a pilot. It shows the final culmination of his efforts. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The process was long and difficult, but ultimately it was worth it. Now you try, indicating where the final responsibility lies. Ultimately, the decision rests with you. Then to recap. This informal phrase is used to quickly summarize or review the main points that have just been discussed. It's a more conversational alternative to summarize or in conclusion, and it's perfect for the end of a meeting or a conversation. For instance, okay, we've covered a lot of ground today. To recap, we discussed the new marketing plan, the budget, and the timeline. It signals a quick summary is coming. Another example. To recap, the most important thing is to remember to practice daily. It's perfect for a brief review. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The meeting covered many topics. To recap, we agreed on the budget and the timeline. Now you try summarizing a goal. To recap, our main goal is to improve customer satisfaction. Another very useful connector is by the same token. This excellent and somewhat formal connector is used to introduce a statement that is similar to or logically connected with a previous one. It's often used to present a parallel argument or a comparable situation, showing consistent logic. For example, exercise is important for physical health. By the same token, good nutrition is absolutely crucial. It shows a parallel importance. Another example, he expects loyalty from his friends, and by the same token, he offers his own loyalty in return. It shows a balanced, two-way relationship. Let's practice. Repeat after me. Education requires dedication from the student. By the same token, success in a career demands perseverance. Now you try, describing a relationship built on trust. He trusts his team completely. By the same token, they trust him. Next, long story short. This is a very common informal phrase used to summarize a lengthy explanation or narrative quickly, getting straight to the main point or outcome. It's perfect for everyday storytelling when you don't want to bore your listener with details. For example, I had a terrible day getting here, the train was late, the traffic was awful, but long story short, I finally got home. You skip all the frustrating details. Another example. We argued for hours about where to go on vacation, and long story short, we finally agreed to go to the beach. It's a great way to be concise. Let's practice. Repeat after me. I tried to fix my computer for hours, and long story short, I ended up buying a new one. Now you try summarizing a travel day. We traveled all day across 3 countries, and long story short, we made it just in time for the wedding. Finally, in this section, on the whole. This phrase is used to introduce a general statement or conclusion that considers most aspects of a situation, even if there are some minor exceptions. It's similar to overall, but often has a slightly more reflective, considered tone. For example, the weather was unpredictable at times, but on the whole, the vacation was extremely enjoyable. It gives a general positive assessment. Another example. The project had some minor issues along the way, but on the whole, it was a great success. It's great for offering a balanced general impression. Let's practice. Repeat after me. The training was challenging, but on the whole, it was very beneficial. Now you try evaluating a team's progress. The team's performance was mixed in some games, but on the whole, they improved a lot this season. Let's add a few more excellent concluding phrases. A classic is in conclusion. This is a formal and very clear way to signal that you are about to state your final points. It's perfect for the end of an essay, presentation, or formal discussion. For example, in conclusion, I believe that the evidence strongly supports our initial hypothesis. It's a definitive final statement. Another example. In conclusion, I would like to thank everyone who contributed to this project. Well, it marks the end of a speech. Let's practice. Repeat after me. In conclusion, we have identified both the challenges and the opportunities ahead. Now you try ending a proposal. In conclusion, this plan offers a path to sustainable growth. A slightly less formal but still very common alternative is to sum up. This phrase clearly indicates that a brief summary of the main points is coming. It's great for meetings or conversations. For instance, we've discussed a lot of ideas. To sum up, we need more time, more resources, and a clearer strategy. It neatly packages the main takeaways. Another example. To sum up, the trip was an unforgettable adventure. It provides a concise final thought. Let's practice. Repeat after me. To sum up, the 3 key takeaways are focus, communication, and teamwork. Now you try summarizing a book. To sum up, it's a story about courage and resilience. For a more conversational and reflective conclusion, you can use when all is said and done. This phrase means after everything else has been considered, or in the end. It's used to state the most important, fundamental truth of a situation. For example, we can debate the small details, but when all is said and done, customer satisfaction is what matters most. It cuts to the essential point. Another example. He made some mistakes, but when all is said and done, he was a good leader. It gives a final, overall judgment. Let's practice. Repeat after me. It was a long and difficult project, but when all is said and done, we can be proud of what we achieved. Now you try reflecting on a life lesson. You will face many challenges, but when all is said and done, your character is what defines you. And a fantastic direct way to state the most important point is, the bottom line is. This is very common in business and everyday conversation. It signals that you are about to state the fundamental, most crucial fact. For instance, we can look at many different metrics, but the bottom line is, are we profitable? It focuses on the ultimate goal. Another example, I know you're busy, but the bottom line is this report has to be finished by Friday. It states a non negotiable reality. Let's practice. Repeat after me. There are many opinions, but the bottom line is the decision is up to the manager. Now you try giving direct advice. You can make excuses, but the bottom line is you need to do the work. Wow, you've just explored a massive 75 truly unique English connectors that are perfect for daily use. We've covered a lot of ground, from adding information with nuance to concluding your thoughts with confidence. They make your conversations flow effortlessly, allowing you to sound much more natural and advanced. These aren't just fancy words to memorize, they are the everyday glue that helps native speakers communicate with such ease and precision. They are the tools you can now use to build more complex, interesting, and fluent sentences. The real magic, of course, happens when you start using them. Knowledge isn't power until it's applied. So here is your action plan. Choose just 3 to 5 of these unique connectors that you particularly like and consciously try to incorporate them into your daily English practice this week. You could even try a Connector of the Day challenge. Pick one in the morning and make it your mission to use it in a real conversation, in a text message, or even just in your own thoughts. Also, start listening for them in movies, TV shows, and podcasts. You'll be amazed at how often you hear them now that you know what to listen for. The more you use them, the more automatic they'll become and the more confident and natural you'll sound. Thank you so much for joining me today on English in Moments. If you found this lesson helpful and feel more confident about adding these 75 unique connectors to your vocabulary, please give this video a big thumbs up. Share it with anyone who wants to boost their English. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have that notification bell turned on so you don't miss any of our future lessons. I'm Elena, and I can't wait to see you next time for another English in Moments. Keep learning and keep shining. Bye for now.